Okay, so picking up where we left off, we have the objects and the definition basically of what visual transform is the difference between the actual transform, the translations and rotations of an object from its center, from its true center, as different from the rotations that it appears to be having, which are the result of parenting to another object as well as constraints on any objects in that chain and so on. It can be, fairly complicated, but the bottom line is the visual transform is the result of animation or positions or what have you, of all the things that lead up to the end result of putting the object where it is, rather than just the position of the object itself, because here the object is actually at center, however it's rotated all the way over here and positioned all the way over here. Okay, so now let's go back over to here and let's just further define what visual transform is. If you click on this object, it's got its center here, and let's see, yeah, that's fine for this one. The center is still there. Do I have another one? Let's do that one. That's better. So this one, the center is here. However, it's parented to this object here, right? Which is parented to this one. Okay, so we'll take this guy and we go Object, Apply, Visual Transform. So I do that, and then additionally I unparent it, but keep the transformation, and you'll see it all change. So now it gets its new position, which is back at 0 actually, because it was backwards before, remember. So now it's actually back at 0, but then it's got this rotation. So here is this object rotated and positioned back at 0. So if I was to get rid of the rotation of this object, it would be straight there and it would be positioned there. Okay, so putting it back at center, you see now it's back there because the object, the distance of the object was here. This was the original distance to the center of the object, the way it was, if that makes any sense. Okay, so now if we go to the more complex animation, what we want to do with this object here now is, as you can see, its actual center is moving all over the place, right? Yet it appears to be rotating from this center because of those constraints and parenting. So now, in the case of animation, what I want to do is go Object, Animation, Bake Action. Okay, and so this, you see, it might not be really super obvious to some people, but visual keying is the same thing as visual transform. It could be saying visual transform keying, which would be more clear. So I want to keyframe it where it is, where it appears to be. That is the result of the transforms and constraints that put it there and rotated it from there as well. So I want to clear the constraints and the parents that made all that happen. And I don't want to overwrite the action in this case, and I'm just going to say OK. And it's going to give all of these keyframes down here. And so now, as you can see, it rotates there. It still appears to be there, but its actual rotation is going all over the place. Now this is helpful when you want to export something to another program, where it's not gonna, another program will not recognize the constraints, maybe the parenting, but certainly won't recognize all the constraints that you stacked on top of each other to make this particular visual transform happen. So now it's baked in. Okay, so that's what that is. That's basically the process to get something out of Blender or any program where you have a very complex hierarchy and series of constraints. And in Blender, it's called visual keying or visual transform as far as baking is concerned. Okay, so hope that makes sense and explains how it will work.